Hey, I'm Axel for HitFilm, and we've received a lot of questions about how to mask lightsabers when they go behind things. So today, I'm going to show you. So in the project you can download from the YouTube description, our scene is already set up with the lightsaber effects added in. But they need some masking when they move behind the robes in this area. To make sure we've got everyone covered, we have two lightsaber layers here. The red light sword uses the 2-point light sword effect, which is available in HitFilm 4 Pro and the Sci-Fi Adventure add-on pack that can be purchased for HitFilm 4 Express. The purple lightsaber uses the free technique for creating lightsabers that is possible in the free version of HitFilm 4 Express. We will do both, so everybody will get the information they need. Let's start with the purple, the free version. This technique, as covered in our free lightsabers tutorial, involves creating a plane, using a mask to create the blade shape, then adding a neon glow effect to create the color and the glow. So, since the effect is created using masks, how do we mask out areas that need to be hidden? The trick lies in the blend mode of the masks. By default, masks use the add mode, which means if we create a new mask and draw a shape around the area we want to remove, that area is added to the mask that is already there. But that's not what we want, is it? We want to remove this new shape. Or, to put it another way, we want to subtract it from the first mask. So, we change the blend mode to subtract, and the second mask is deleted from the first. Simple as that. Now, as you do in creating the blade shape, we enable keyframes for the path property, and then animate the mask shape to create the movement. There's no two ways about it. This is boring to watch, so I'm going to speed it up. If we can't make it exciting, we can at least make it a lot more silly. Note that you can add more than one mask using this method. You can subtract as many masks as your scene requires. How hard of an edge you want will depend somewhat on how close the object obscuring the blade is to the blade itself. If it's close, like this robe is, then this technique is great because it doesn't chop the glow off in a hard fashion. It allows the glow from the blade to wrap around onto the robe. If the object in front of the blade is a long ways away from the saber, though, then a harder edge might be appropriate. For that, the best technique is to duplicate your video layer, place the copy above the effect, then use a mask on that copy to retain the area that overlaps the saber. So I can copy our existing mask, paste it onto this copy of the footage, and then set its blend to add, since it is the first mask on the layer. I'm going to delete this copy of our footage now and focus back on the purple lightsaber layer. Usually, a mask to obscure part of your blade will not be required through the entire scene, though. So what do you do with them when they aren't needed? We actually have a couple of options. We can just drag the mask out of the way when it isn't needed, perhaps out of frame. If we find the first keyframe for the path, everything before this doesn't require a mask. So step back one frame and drag the mask out of frame, and the mask is completely out of the way up until our first keyframe. Then you could do the same thing after the last keyframe. We could also keyframe the mask opacity so it disappears when it isn't needed. If we go to the last keyframe of our mask and enable keyframing for the mask opacity, then advance one frame and set opacity to 0, the mask won't affect any frames afterward. You could, of course, also use this technique to make the mask appear before the first keyframe. A third option is to slice the layer, so we end up with a layer that only lasts as long as the mask is required. If you do this before creating the mask, you can just apply the mask to the one section that needs it. In our case, with the mask already created, we could just delete the second mask from the clips that don't need it. I generally don't use this method because it creates multiple layers you have to manage, and if you want to modify the glow later on, you need to change the effect on all the layers to match. But it is an option if you like. I'm going to jump back in the history panel to before I split the layers, and then hide this purple lightsaber layer and switch to the red lightsword layer to look at masking with the lightsword 2-point auto effect, which can be purchased in the Sci-Fi Adventure Pack or HitFilm 4 Pro. We also have a tutorial dealing specifically with this effect if you aren't familiar with how the lightsword effects can help speed up the process of creating your lightsword blades. The basic process of masking is really the same. We add a mask to the layer containing our lightsword effects and animate the mask as required. But this does rely on the lightsword effect being applied to a plane or grade layer, and not directly to the video itself. If the lightsword is applied directly to the video, then our masks will cut holes in the video layer. Not ideal. The key difference in this case is one of blend mode. When we add the mask, the area inside the shape is retained instead of removed. But since we only have one mask here, we don't want to use subtract. We want to leave the blend mode on add and invert the mask, so the area outside the shape is retained. Now, rather than actually animating this entire mask again, I'm going to delete it, then copy the mask we already created and paste it onto this layer. If we change its blend to add and invert it, then we're good to go. And that's really all there is to it. If you're creating lightsabers with masks applied to a plane, then you use masks with subtract blend to remove bits. If you are using the lightsword effect, then you use masks with add blend mode and invert enabled. Short and simple, and hopefully useful. Thanks very much for watching. And we have some great content in the works right now, so do subscribe if you don't want to miss it.